Hey, welcome back to my Uncle Farm. This is our board and batten chicken coop that we just finished. I'm getting ready to start on the run now. I've got the boards up there prepping them for paint. So we're gonna have an 8-foot run coming off the end of it and tying into the roof line here above the windows. But I'm gonna give you a walkthrough on how to build this. It's not very difficult. I like board and batten better than using the T111 siding. I'm not a big fan of that. Board and batten to me looks a little bit better. And I'm also able to use exterior grade treated lumber for it. 1x8s is what I used. And with this, there's not a lot of waste. I built it 6x4, so it would be a nice even fit for the lumber lengths that you will get. So I had hardly any waste. I think I had maybe 2.5 feet of 1x8 board left over. Everything else was used in the trim and the windows. I ripped a lot of it down. You can build this coop with a skill saw, nail gun if you have it. If not, use screws or just a hammer and nails. It's not very difficult to build. And as I go through, I'm going to show you the measurements that I'm using on how I built it. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment or shoot me a message. Before we get started, this is what the inside of it looks like. I put the roosting bars on this side after watching Third Coast Craftsman's video where he built one similar, and he came up with this droppings board, which I thought was just an awesome idea. So I'm going to link his channel in the description. But that's the reason I moved everything over to here. But that's the inside. I didn't bother painting the inside because I don't plan on the inside of it getting wet. What I'm going to have is a 4-foot wide by 6-foot single pitch. It's going to be 312, so it's a 15-degree cut on these. And I'm going to go 30 inches off the ground for the platform because I want to be able to underpin it to deal with the high winds here in Florida. So I've already got the inside braces on, the 2x6s at the bottom, and just stuck a board across the top so they'll stand up. Next thing I have to do is some of the boards that we ripped down, we're going to cut them so that the outside dimensions here are 6 feet. So I've got to get my measurements, turn that into the remaining boards I need for 6 feet. And what I will be doing is putting 2 of these together so that they span the entire inside. On the long side especially, I want that stiffness. And then we'll use our Craig jig to actually shoot the screws in instead of toe nailing. All right, so we're going for an overall outside of 6 feet with the 3.5-inch 4x4 post. That leaves us inside of 65 inches. So I've cut the first one and getting ready to cut its mate. Then I will make one solid piece out of it with a few screws, put it across the back, and then I can take that little tacked on board out so we can get started on the rest of it. So the platform will be sitting, I want to put it at 30 inches off the ground, which will leave me 39 inches. And that takes up the space at the bottom and then leaves the chickens a full 3 feet on the back wall. All right, well, the back side is done. I'm going to repeat the process to do the front, and then we will worry about the sides. So just like on the other side, using the pocket screws with a Craig jig, and I'm going to double up this side. Actually, probably just double up both sides because I have enough wood to do it. And that'll give me a pretty solid base. I will have some supports in the middle. Probably I'll run them from the back to the front and probably put 4 in between, 3 to 4. I don't really mind using these from the outside. What I do on the inside is I use a single, typically either a 3 or 4-inch screw, and just take a regular drill bit and get it started at the angle I want. So I do a 45 in, and I split the difference in the pocket screws, which is sufficient to hold. You got 3 screws at each end holding it from different directions. That should work. If anyone from DeWalt is watching, it'd be really nice if you made clamps that the rubber pieces on the inside didn't break off. And one other thing I will do, since I'm using old lumber, is I will verify the measurement of each support. The joists need to be exact. I like for them to fit tight. So we're going to come in don't assume anything. And what we end up with is 40 and basically just less than 41. It's a 16th off, 7/8. 40 and 7/8 is going to be pretty tight there. So that's what I'm going to cut this one to, and I'll measure each one as I go. This next part I'm going to do because I have a table saw. You can do it with a skill saw, but it's really kind of a pain in the butt. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the same 15-degree angle in my top plate and then double it, and that'll give me my height from the floor up to here. If you wanted to forego that, putting this slanted roof on, you could simply put your top plate here. You could have squared these 4x4s off, squared off with the top plate, and simply used the hurricane clips. But what I don't like about doing that is the rafter itself doesn't have as much board to sit on. If you do that, it's sitting on the very corner of that. Now you can notch out your rafters, which also works, but still you're only getting maybe a half of a board's width. I'd rather have a full board's width, and since I have a table saw, I can go ahead and rip this down, no problem. But if you don't, and you don't want to do it with a skill saw, then simply get the hurricane clips and attach them. And I'm going to attach these anyway, but I'm going to have a full board for them to sit on, plus the hurricane clips to hold it, because obviously here in Florida, we get hurricanes, and I want to make sure this roof does not come off. If you're in an area that doesn't do that, then by all means, I would probably just square this one off and have flat top plates and go with hurricane clips. It'd be a lot easier. It's the next day. Ran out of light yesterday afternoon. I did finish the back wall. I was watching a video by Third Coast Craftsman. He had a really neat idea. He designed a droppings board underneath the roost, but that only works if the roost is going across the short end and the end of the droppings board is closest to the door. So I had originally intended to put nesting boxes on the end versus the back. Looking at that, it makes me want to just go ahead and put some across the back here. Full door on the left side, leave the right wall blank, entrance to the coop, or actually the entrance to the run going out of the front. So I'm going to do that instead. What I have to do now, I'm going to go ahead and cut the boards for the top plate and the studs for the front and this side. On the side, the top plate is going to be at a 15-degree angle on the end of the 2x4s. And on the front, I'll have to rip it all the way down like I did the one on the back wall. Came across one slight issue. This corner post has a little bit of a twist in it, starting right in here. You can probably see it. And outside it's fine, but on the inside it leaves me with a little more of a gap. Could I have fixed that when I was cutting? Yes, but it's not going to be the end of the world. It simply means that whenever I do the front plate, I need to allow for a little bit extra on the front side of that board to close up that gap. But essentially with the studs and with these double plates, I will be able to, I'm going to attach the bottom plate first to the stud and to the post, and then I'll come in and attach the top plate to the post and to this one. So it'll be fine, just a little bit annoying. In the interest of saving a little time, off camera, I went ahead and ripped the top plate for the front and cut them at the correct angles on this edge over here to accommodate the twist. So the next thing I'll do is I'll measure for the studs, of course, outside to outside first. So I'll have my supports, and then I'll start in the center and work my way out from there. Same as with the back, I'll be using the pocket hole screws for these. That way they're attached securely to the main post in the front, and then I'll measure and cut my studs, and I'll finish this wall up. You can see I had to cut the front side's just a little bit longer than the back to account for the twist, but I mean, it took it out of the front pretty nice. Got just a little bit of a twist in it. A little bit of a gap in the back, but not bad. Nothing that's really going to matter, because using the pocket screws, I was able to put them both on the outside, closer to where, you know, it's all together. The twist is on the probably the last third of the board mostly. So, got a pretty good fit on it anyway, and it'll work just fine for a chicken coop. Well, I've hit a good stopping point for today. I have done 3 sides, and I've measured out where the header for the door is going to go. I want a door between 29 and 30 inches high, so what I did was I measured the top cap on the other end, cut at an angle that's going to be a little bit thicker than it would be normally, so it's 3 1/4 inches. I'm 36 inches from the top of this post down to the floor, so I'll back out my math, 3 1/4 inches down. Header for the door is going to be 2 2x4s together with a piece of OSB between them. That's 3 1/2 inches. So I'm at 6 3/4 inches. I measure 6 3/4 inches down, and that shows me where I need to put the supports for the door, or I'm sorry, the supports for the header. One thing left to do is I got to measure down here and put a piece against the front here, and then I can go ahead and cut my angles and put my top plate in. I will be putting 2 short studs, very short studs right here, and that'll finish out the framing for the walls. All right, got the top plate in on this side. I ended up, since I was using pocket screws on the bottom, I actually had to bring the header down 1/4 inch to give myself enough room to work with to get the pocket screws in. But since I'm going to be adding bracing here and here, it's not really going to matter. Everything finished over the door. That pretty much completes the framing of the box itself. I will be adding some additional framing for the windows. And I'm basically just going to buy plexiglass, build a window for it, and attach it to it, and then screen it from the inside. So the nesting boxes will be next, and I'll get started on those here in just a minute. All right, I went ahead and cut the left side to show you how the chicken nesting boxes are going to go together. I've seen a lot of people on YouTube that make a box and then simply screw it to the studs, and that's fine. I would prefer to have some support underneath it. So I will have a toe board underneath it, which will attach to the studs, but also top and bottom, I'm going to be attaching from the side, not from the edge. I would much rather rely on the sheer strength of a screw being broken than one being pulled out. So that's what I'm going with. I'm going to finish cutting all this. I like to dry fit everything first, but as soon as I get it done, I will go over the measurements in case you want to build one similar to this, and you'll have everything you need there. Now, as far as the width goes, it'll depend on what size coop you're using, but this frame itself, I can give you the exact dimensions of, and you can just build it yourself. Sorry if there's any wind noise. I have to stand here with the door open. The breeze is coming from the south, as it usually does this time of year. And that's the only thing keeping these gnats off of me. They're, in the afternoon, they're almost unbearable. They're not sand gnats. We're not right on the coast. The farm is north of the coast. But still, we got the gnats that come out of the woods over here by the river, and they are relentless. Now I'm joining these with pocket screws. You could use just regular wood screws, but you would need 4-inch screws in order to make this work. So I didn't have any. The longest I had was 3, I think 3.5 for fencing. So pocket screws, I got plenty of those. Might as well just use them on this. It's a lot easier than going to the store to buy screws. Got it upside down here. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in 3.5 inches from the end and put another 2x2. And I ripped these down, so these are actually true 2x2s. If you want something just a little bit beefier than a smaller board, a 2x2 at the store is not this big, then go buy the 2x3s. A 2x4 is probably overkill for this, unless you want to really, if you're going to build a really long nesting box, I might would go that size, but for what I'm doing, this true 2x2 is just fine. This is what it should look like when you're done. Now I will be putting a rail across the back, probably also a 2x2, because remember, I'm going to be making a door that has an interior frame of 2x2s, so it's going to sit about right here. So I won't have enough room between the two of them to get my hand in to get any eggs out, but it'll have a little bit, it gives it a little bit of a lip so that when I open the door, it's not just a flat surface coming out. So I'll take that board and put it at the same angle so that I can attach the metal roofing to it. And I'll probably use a 2x4, I would guess, to come in and go across, because I need something to attach metal to at the front of it as well. So I'll probably just take a 2x4, put it at the same angle, run it across, because its main purpose in being there is to attach to metal roofing. I went with another 2x2 ripped down. I didn't have a 2x4 that I wanted to use for this. So I'm going to put the flooring on the bottom after I paint the frame, and then put something in front to give them a little bit of a lip. But other than that, it's finished. And hopefully it gives you a good idea of what you can do. Not complicated at all. I'm going to give you some final measurements. Let me grab a tape. So on the base, 16 inches. This board, 6 inches on the short side. So whatever angle that you want to use, I'm using 15 degrees. So the short side of that angle is 6 inches. And then cutting on an angle, that made my 2x2 at the top 16 3/4. Overall length, overall width, just under 62 inches. That gives me an interior depth. As you can see, 11.5 here where the door will be, but there's going to be a door in the way there, so it's actually to the inside of that. It's probably going to be a little more like 12.5 or 13. And up at the front, we will have 13.5 inches of clearance to the top. Oh, almost forgot. Overall depth, front to back, is a foot. All right, well, I'm gonna wrap it up here. I'll probably end up having to make this into 2 videos because it's time consuming going step by step, but that's where we're at. This is what your chicken coop will look like framed out. One thing left is the hurricane strips and the rafters, and time to start putting siding on and roofing.